for truth. It is a time for liberty. It is a time to reclaim the Constitution of the United States.
As we welcome you into Hour 3 of America's Forum with Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth, and of course, Miranda, that was yesterday at Liberty University. Ted Cruz kicking off his campaign for president.
Yeah, yesterday he became the first out of the gate to officially announce a presidential bid. The question now everyone's asking is, will his declaration set off a chain reaction? Joining us for more on this story, our good friend, political analyst Dick Morris, who is also the author of the best-selling book, Power Grab. So, Dick, Ted stepped right up and grabbed the first spot out of the gate. Did it help him to announce first?
Well, I think that it's important. I think he was fading a little bit. And the key thing in his candidacy is going to be what the Supreme Court rules in Burwell versus King versus Burwell. If they rule that the subsidies on Obamacare are illegal and it has to go back to Congress, that's Cruz's backyard. And in the Senate, he would be the main opponent of Obamacare who would have to shape that legislation. And I think that he will largely repeal it, and I think he will largely get credit for that. And I think Obama may have to sign his bill, which would be a huge triumph, and I think Cruz has a good shot at putting that together. But I don't agree with you.
Okay. You think it was good for him to go ahead and make
I'm in the middle right here.
We from time to time disagree about it. Well, give me your take on that first.
Okay.
Well, I agree with what you were critical of his spot. His first ad he comes out with is in Spanish. And you were saying that promotes multiculturalism and bilingualism. And I agree. I don't like to see that done. I think everybody should learn English. But it's a brilliant strategic move because it reminds people that he's a Latino candidate. You have Marco Rubio, who's sitting up there at 12% of the vote nationally, and Cruz is at 4%. And everybody says, oh, Rubio's Latino. But Cruz has himself become so assimilated that nobody thinks of him as Latino. And by putting the ad out in Spanish, he emphasizes that point. And that's a crucial point because Republicans want to nominate a Latino, because they want to prove they're not racist. They understand that's the swing vote. They understand that's the growing vote. And what Cruz essentially is doing is saying, hey, I'm Latino too.
But he's very, very adamant about immigration.
Yeah, very strong in agreement with my friend J.D. here and me on immigration. But how brilliant of him at the same time to put out an ad in Spanish, which in effect says there are a lot of Latinos that don't agree with the leadership of the Latino movement. In fact, the polling shows the difference is, were you born here or not? If you were born here, if you're Latino, you probably oppose the immigration bill, amnesty. If you were not, you support it.
Well, speaking of being born here, we just heard Donald Trump. He's been very critical of him, saying he's not even sure if Ted Cruz is eligible to run for president. Talk about this a little bit.
Trump is setting himself up as a branch office of ICE.
Well, he was born in Canada.
But you were mentioning about my old friend Hillary.
Yeah.
I wrote a story with Eileen that was out today. You can go to thehillarydaily.com and find it. Hillary Clinton doesn't type. I'm kind of the only guy that would know that and can say it in public, but she doesn't type. In 20 years of working with them, I never got a memo from her, anything typed. She can't type. Bill can't and she can't. So when you go through these emails, don't expect to find a lot on that server written by Hillary. If she could, it would be just pecked out. For really important emails, look to Uma Abedin or Cheryl Mills, her two chief aides, who are with her all the time. They're the ones whose emails would contain the stuff you want to find out.
So what Trey Gowdy should do right now is to issue subpoenas for those two assistants, Cheryl Mills and Uma Abedin.
Well, they'll be on the server because he subpoenaed the server. But yes, exactly. And Hillary doesn't type. In fact, Bill doesn't either. And there's a wonderful story. When I first drafted the State of the Union for him in 1995, he had me write it out in longhand. And I couldn't do it. My wrist isn't strong enough. So I typed it on an IBM Selectric typewriter they dug up from the basement because he didn't want it on the White House computer system, because his aides would know he didn't write it because he can't type. So as the pages came out, he copied them over in his left-handed scrawl. I still have a copy of it, and then gave it to his aides and said I was up all night writing this.
Well, we know for a fact that Dick Morris and his wife Eileen labored over a book that you'll be able to get. It's Power Grab, Obama's Dangerous Plan for a One-Party Nation. You can get it at the website, powergrab411.com. Don't go away. There's more with Dick Morris when we come back.
We know a lot about social mobility. One of the biggest issues we face is income inequality combined with wage stagnation. They really go hand in hand. We don't have enough good jobs. We don't have people being placed into those jobs. We don't have enough social mobility.
Hillary Clinton sounding presidential at the Center for American Progress panel discussion back here on America's Forum with Miranda Kahn, and also with us our good friend Dick Morris, the political analyst, who revealed some interesting information about Hillary and Bill and their time in Washington. Hillary does not type, but we've been dealing with so many of her difficulties. What does she do well? What will help her rally, and what are Democrats trying to count on with her?
Well, she obviously is a strong candidate, and the problem is that so many of her assets are embodied in her gender. When you ask people, what do you like most about her? She's a woman. Second most, first woman president. Third most, way down, competent, experienced. And that makes her very vulnerable to a challenge from Elizabeth Warren, who is just as much a woman as she is. The thing we were talking about before, it was kind of rushed when the break came on, is her lack of ability to type. Now, I'm reminded of the story of Elizabeth Ray, who was hired as a secretary for Woody Hayes.
Wayne Hayes,
who had a sex scandal relationship with her. And they called her before a congressional committee, and she's secretary, and she said, I don't type. But that was another era. But Hillary doesn't type. And in looking for her emails and wondering, will that have the hidden secrets of Benghazi? If they do, they wouldn't be on Hillary's email. They would be on Uma's or Cheryl Mills, her constant companions and aides. And that's where you need to look. And I don't think there's anyone who's ever told the House committee that she doesn't type. But I know she doesn't, because, I worked with her for 20 years and with Bill, and they don't type.
It's just so fascinating to me.
And which is why Trey Gowdy and the guys from the Select Committee should be watching us on Newsmax TV, because what is we're neither of us are lawyers, but I wonder about what does this set up for Cheryl Mills and for Uma in terms of personal exposure?
Well, they're going to have to turn over emails. Any citizen is obliged to answer a subpoena, and they'll be included in the defense. But I'm saying that when you dig there too. Because Hillary would just be able to peck out, let's lie about Benghazi.
Oh,
you're not going to get a lot there.
Yeah, I think she's probably smarter than that.
Well, let's double back for a second, because this one thing about Ted Cruz on the calendar announcing when he did made certain that he became topic A in every conversation.
Yeah, well.
Now, you were talking earlier about the fact that you thought it was good that he had the ad in Spanish. My point was that you could kill two birds with one stone. You could remind people of your Latino heritage, but at the same time you spoke glowingly of English. It was a twofer, at least in my mind.
But I think woulda, coulda, shoulda, but it's a great shot. And I think because it marries him it makes him overtly a Latino, which in a sense he's really has not been a huge portion of his image. The key thing about Cruz is that of all of the candidates running for president, he's the only one in a sense with the job. Because as senator, he's the key person on Obamacare. Rubio has no comparable role, Paul has no comparable role, and none of the others are in Congress. And he has a job, and that job is to be in charge of the conservative view on Obamacare. And when that decision, if the court comes down and kicks it back to Congress and says it's illegal as it is now, Cruz will be the key actor. And you have to see his presidential candidacy through the light of that event.
So it's very different. Howard Baker back in 1980 thought being the Republican leader in the Senate would help him get elected president. It didn't, obviously.
Right, but Baker was majority leader. And to do that, or minority, I forget, but to do that, you had to run the show. You had to juggle everybody and all that. Cruz doesn't. He's an advocate. And he'll be the right-wing advocate for repeal of Obamacare after the court decision. And that will be a 100% position within the Republican Party. And his job will be to line up all the Republicans and not have anyone dare defect. And he'll succeed in that. And then the bill, in effect, goes back to Obama, and he has to decide if he wants a veto, which eliminates subsidies for 6 million people.
What's the biggest thing you think he needs to focus on?
About 30 seconds on this.
Healthcare, Obamacare, that's the
Yeah.
issue that brung him.
Okay.
And that's what he needs to focus on. And he needs to explain that you can win an election as a conservative Republican by hyping the turnout among the true believers rather than moving over to the swing voters. That's how Reagan did it, and that's how Cruz would do it.
And which is why he used the term courageous conservatives yesterday, and specifically
And
calling
he's
out
the
that
brightest
faction.
and the most articulate of the field. And I think that's going to become evident as he runs.
Just one other note, you can get the copy of Dick Morris's best-selling book, Power Grab, by visiting this website, powergrab411.com. We're coming back.